For centuries, the Star of Bethlehem has stood as one of the most captivating mysteries intertwined with both religious tradition and scientific inquiry. According to the well-known narrative in the Gospel of Matthew, 3 magi, often referred to as wise men or astrologers, observed an extraordinary celestial sign that compelled them to journey westward. This radiant object, later known as the Star of Bethlehem, supposedly guided them first to Jerusalem and ultimately to the town of Bethlehem, where they found the newborn Jesus. The story is deeply embedded in Christian culture and has been repeated for generations through scripture, art, literature, and holiday tradition. Yet, despite its familiarity, the actual nature of the star remains elusive and has fueled debate not only among theologians and historians, but also astronomers who seek a natural explanation for an event described in ancient text. If the biblical account retells a genuine historical occurrence, then scientists wish to understand what kind of astronomical phenomenon could have inspired it. Scholars have proposed numerous theories, ranging from comets to supernovas, planetary alignments, and even symbolic astrological interpretations. Each hypothesis attempts to reconcile modern scientific knowledge with the textual clues provided in the Gospel of Matthew, which, while brief, offers several intriguing details. The Magi, likely astrologers from Persia or Babylon, were deeply skilled in reading the night sky, and any unusual event would have held profound meaning for them. As David Weintraub, a professor of physics and astronomy at Vanderbilt University, explained, if the New Testament is reporting a real historical observation, then it demands a real explanation. And for astronomers, that explanation should logically come from the natural behavior of the heavens, rather than dismiss the account as purely symbolic or miraculous. Some researchers believe the narrative could be rooted in an extraordinary but natural astronomical event that captured the attention of skilled skywatchers 2,000 years ago. One of the earliest proposed explanations involves Halley's Comet, which was indeed visible around 11 BC. However, several issues arise when this possibility is examined more closely. While Halley's Comet is among the most famous and frequently observed comets in history, its appearance does not align neatly with the biblical chronology many scholars propose for the birth of Jesus, which is typically dated somewhere between 7 and 4 BC. More importantly, as the Magi traveled, a comet would not have behaved in a way that could realistically guide them in a consistent direction. Comets move across the sky relative to the stars, and because Earth rotates, their apparent motion changes significantly over the course of a night. This would make it nearly impossible for travelers to rely on such an object as a stable guide across long distances. Furthermore, comets were generally interpreted as bad omens in ancient cultures, often signaling disaster or political upheaval rather than good news. Grant Matthews, a professor of theoretical astrophysics and cosmology at the University of Notre Dame, noted that although modern depictions often show a comet as the Star of Bethlehem for artistic effect, early observers would have viewed such an object with fear rather than hope. Another popular theory suggests the star may have been a nova or supernova, a sudden, dramatic explosion of a star that brightens the sky for weeks or months. Such events can be seen from vast distances and would certainly attract the attention of ancient astronomers. However, if a nova or supernova had occurred in the region of the sky visible from Earth during the period believed to coincide with Jesus' birth, astronomers today would expect to find remnants of the exploded star. These remnants leave behind signatures detectable with modern telescopes, yet no such evidence dating to that period has been discovered. Additionally, historical records from early civilizations, particularly Chinese astronomers who meticulously documented celestial events, do not report any major explosion in the sky around the time associated with the Magi's journey. The absence of such records makes the nova or supernova hypothesis considerably less likely. Beyond comets and explosions, some scholars have pointed to the behavior of ordinary stars. However, stars themselves cannot act as guiding beacons in the way the biblical description implies. Stars rise in the east and set in the west due to Earth's rotation, and their positions shift gradually throughout the year. As Weintraub explained, You cannot simply follow a star from one city to another, because stars do not maintain a fixed position relative to the horizon or a particular direction on Earth. If the Magi had attempted to use a star as a literal navigational tool, they would have found themselves moving in unintended directions or even walking in circles. This inconsistency suggests the biblical description may not be referring to a normal star at all, but rather something whose motion or appearance behaved in a way that seemed significant to trained observers. The fact that the event would presumably have been visible to others also complicates matters. A large, bright stellar event, such as a supernova, would likely have been documented not only in the Middle East, but in various civilizations across the world. Yet the historical record remains silent. This silence leaves astronomers to consider less obvious or less dramatic possibilities, phenomena that might have stood out primarily to astrologers who interpreted the sky symbolically rather than to the general population. This leads to one of the most intriguing scientific theories: the possibility that the Star of Bethlehem was not a physical object like a comet or explosion, but a rare and meaningful planetary conjunction. In ancient astrology, the movement of planets held deep significance, and when two or more planets appeared very close together in the sky, such an event could be interpreted as a powerful omen. Around 7 B.C., an exceptionally close conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn occurred in the constellation Pisces. This event took place multiple times within a single year, something extremely unusual, and would have been especially compelling to Babylonian astrologers. Jupiter was often associated with kingship, Saturn with old wisdom or divine power, and Pisces with regions linked to Judaism. To astrologers of the era, the convergence of these symbols could have indicated the birth of an important ruler among the Jewish people. Unlike a comet, a planetary conjunction appears stationary relative to the stars and moves in a predictable pattern, making it feasible for the Magi to interpret it as a sign pointing them toward Judea. An even more striking possibility occurred around 2 BC, when Jupiter underwent a visually stunning series of behaviors in the night sky. At one point, Jupiter appeared to stand still, an effect caused by retrograde motion, when a planet seems to pause before reversing its direction relative to the background stars. To ancient observers, this standing still could easily match the biblical description that the star stopped over the place where the child was. Though the exact chronology remains debated, it is clear that planetary motion could produce the kind of symbolic cues that skilled astrologers, like the Magi, would have recognized as significant. These subtle yet meaningful alignments would not necessarily have been noticed by ordinary people, explaining why historical records outside the Gospel do not describe a brilliant or overwhelming event. Some scholars, however, suggest the Star of Bethlehem might not be describable purely in scientific terms at all. They argue that the story's purpose within the Gospel of Matthew is theological rather than astronomical. The Magi's journey illustrates the recognition of Jesus' importance by foreign nations and emphasizes the fulfillment of Old Testament prophecy. From this perspective, the star serves as a literary or symbolic device rather than a physical phenomenon. Still, even those who approach the story religiously sometimes maintain that God could have used a natural astronomical event to mark the momentous occasion, blending the spiritual with the scientific. Ultimately, while we may never know with absolute certainty what the Magi saw in the sky over 2,000 years ago, the search for an explanation has sparked centuries of curiosity and investigation. Modern astronomy allows us to reconstruct ancient skies with great accuracy, giving us the tools to test various hypotheses. Yet the absence of definitive evidence for comets, novas, or supernovas near the time period forces scientists to consider more subtle but symbolically rich events like planetary conjunctions, events that would not leave physical remnants but could have carried great meaning for ancient astrologers. The Star of Bethlehem remains a fascinating intersection of faith and science, inviting us to reflect not only on what may have happened in history, but on how humans across time have looked to the heavens for guidance, meaning, and a sense of wonder.